Hi, everyone. We are getting started with modeling photosynthesis and cellular respiration in cells. We're going to kind of walk through this process together so that everyone is on the same page. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on my picture here, but I'm going to be reading the directions off to the right. We're going to start with our animal cell, and we're going to start with modeling cell respiration in our animal cell. So if I go ahead and zoom in on this, the first thing that asks us to do is color all the mitochondria pink. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pick like a light pink here. And our mitochondria, we know there's multiple in a cell, and they typically are shown with this kind of squiggly line in the middle. So this is how I know that this is my mitochondria. So I'm going to color all these guys here pink. And it looks like I have 3 of them in this cell. My second step says color the cytoplasm light blue. I will try and go through this as quickly as I can. Obviously, there's a lot to color here, so feel free to kind of color along with me. Skip forward if you need to, things like that. For those of us who aren't familiar with the cytoplasm is like a jelly-like substance that is found inside the cell. So it's all of this space that surrounds all of the other organelles that we see in our cell. So all of this in blue here is going to be our cytoplasm. Perfect. So now that I've got my cytoplasm colored, I can go ahead and start modeling what's actually happening in this process. Step 3 says draw an arrow showing glucose entering the cell. So I will go ahead, I'm going to keep with my colors that it asks me to use in the explanations. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw just a quick arrow into the cell right here. And we know that this is our glucose. It also asks me to include what type of transport movement it uses and that it is coming from the small intestine. So glucose is one of those molecules that's a little bit too big to use diffusion. So the other option here, since we are going from high concentration to low concentration, is going to be facilitated diffusion. So I'm just going to write that in parentheses here, facilitated diffusion. And then it said to write from the small intestine because glucose is coming from our food and into our cells. Perfect. Step 4, now that glucose is in the cell, it's going to break into 2 pyruvates. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to draw this process, switch back to my pink. And I'm actually going to draw it kind of what it looks like. So glucose ends up looking like this. We have 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 different little spaces here or sections here. And what's going to end up happening is that is going to split into 2. So then 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. So we start off with this first guy right here. This is our glucose, and it splits into pyruvate. And I'm going to put in parentheses that there are 2 of them here, just to help me kind of remember. So this shows this occurs in the cytoplasm, which means it's happening in this blue space right here. It also wants us to draw an arrow showing pyruvate entering the mitochondria and what type of transport this uses. So I'm going to just circle my pyruvates here. I'm going to draw them going into the mitochondria. And because this is not glucose, it's going to just use the process of diffusion. It's small enough to kind of make it through on its own. So this uses diffusion. Okay. My next step Step number 5 says draw an arrow showing oxygen entering the cell and the mitochondria. So my oxygen is in green. We get that from our equations right up here. We've already had glucose enter our cell for cellular respiration. Now we have to have oxygen enter the cell. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show oxygen entering both the cell and the mitochondria here. So this is my oxygen. And part of step 5, it asks me to state what transport movement it uses and that it's coming from the alveolus or capillary here. So I'm going to say that because it's oxygen, it's a particle here. This is going to use diffusion as well. And it's coming from the alveolus / capillary. Remember, we're diffusing oxygen in from our blood here. Okay. So now that I have my two things that move into the cell, I also have to take a look at what leaves the cell. And according to my cellular respiration equation here, I have water leaving the cell and I have carbon dioxide leaving the cell, as well as this ATP that's produced. So I'm going to start with my water. Step number 6 says draw an arrow showing water exiting the mitochondria and the cell. That is in blue. So I'm going to show water leaving. This is my water. And it asks us to state what transport movement it uses here. So water is small enough to fit through our membrane in between those phospholipids. But water uses a special type of passive transport, which is called osmosis, if you guys remember back to our last unit. So it's not diffusion, it's osmosis, because osmosis is very, very similar to diffusion. It's just for water though, special name just for water. And last but not least, we have to move our carbon dioxide. Our carbon dioxide is listed in red here. So carbon dioxide is going to leave that mitochondria. I'm going to draw my arrow outwards. Carbon dioxide. And step number 7 also asks me to tell what type of transport movement it uses and where it is going. So our carbon dioxide, again, uses diffusion. So I'll write that. And it also tells us that we need to tell us where it's going, and it's going back out to the capillary / alveolus. Remember that oxygenated blood comes in, deoxygenated blood leaves. So the deoxygenated blood is the one that is the stuff that has the carbon dioxide in it. Last but not least, it wants us to demonstrate that ATP is being produced here. So I'm going to just draw a little arrow over on this side showing that we are making 36 ATP being produced. And this is the whole point of cellular respiration. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of make that very clear that this is happening. Now remember, we're able to make a lot of ATP because we have this stuff right here. Let me get it in green. We have this oxygen that is present in our cell. If that oxygen was not present, then we would only produce 2 ATP because we'd have to do lactic acid fermentation. Okay, so there's our completed animal cell doing cell respiration.